Today, we're going to look at one of the most famous love stories from Greek mythology. A story about how the god of the underworld, Hades, met his wife, Persephone, who was the goddess of spring. Persephone spent most of her time in a field away from the other gods of Olympus, as her mother wanted her to remain pure and unmarried. It was in this field that Hades first spotted her, falling in love with the goddess as soon as he laid eyes on her. So he headed to Mount Olympus, where he could find Zeus, who was both Hades' brother and the father of Persephone. So Hades spoke to his brother and asked for permission to marry Persephone. Zeus agreed to this quite happily, and so Hades made his way back to the forest where Persephone was hidden to claim the wife he had just been granted. But Zeus completely failed to discuss this decision with the mother of Persephone, Demeter. Demeter was the goddess of agriculture and crops, making her a very important deity to the ancient Greeks. Upon returning to the field, Hades waited for Persephone to be alone and then moved towards her. As Hades got close, Persephone became very scared, but before she could flee, Hades grabbed her. He then ripped open a hole in the ground, and while she was kicking and screaming, he dragged her down to his domain, the underworld. As this happened, Demeter had a sudden feeling that her daughter was in danger. She was instantly filled with dread at the thought of what might have happened to Persephone, so she headed out to find her, discarding all her duties and basic needs in the meantime. Demeter only took with her 2 torches so that she could illuminate every corner of the earth while she searched. And when she could not find Persephone in the fields or on Mount Olympus, she began to search the entire world. But without the goddess of agriculture at work, the crops and plants began to wither and die, leading to a great famine all over the mortal world. Eventually, a wise and old god named Helios stepped in. Helios was the god of the sun, and renowned for being all-seeing as he lived so high up above everyone else. He reached out to Demeter to inform her of what happened to her daughter, and of course, Demeter was livid. She marched straight to Mount Olympus to demand that her daughter was returned. When she arrived, she vowed to Zeus that she would not allow any fruit or vegetation to grow whilst her daughter remained trapped in the underworld. Zeus tried to plead with her for the sake of the starving mortals, but Demeter was not interested in discussing it and made her leave. Zeus was left with no choice. At this point, millions of humans were now without food, and the famine was becoming severe, whilst he would have to break his promise he made to Hades. To do nothing would lead to the deaths of millions. So he employed Hermes, the messenger of the gods, to go down to the underworld and speak to Hades. By this time, Hades and Persephone had married. Hades was more in love with her than ever, and Persephone seemed to be warming to the god of the dead. So when Hermes arrived with the message from Zeus, Hades was angered by the request. But he realised he had no choice. He didn't want to face the wrath of Zeus, nor cause the deaths of so many innocent people. Instead, he came up with a plan. He went to Persephone and told her he would send her back above ground with Hermes. But first, he offered her some pomegranate, insisting that she eat something before returning. So she ate a few seeds of the fruit and then made her leave with Hermes. Back above ground, Demeter was of course relieved to see her daughter again. But this excitement quickly faded when she learned of how Persephone ate some food from Hades in the underworld. This was terrible news for Demeter, because if someone was captured and then ate food in the underworld, they would have to stay there indefinitely. Demeter, once again, was distraught, fearing she would lose her daughter forever. This forced Zeus to step in and offer an agreement to try and appease everyone. Since Persephone only ate a few seeds of the pomegranate, and not the whole fruit which was offered, she would only be required to spend a few months of the year in the underworld. The rest of the time, she was free to move back to Mount Olympus to live with her mother and fellow gods. Demeter was still not pleased, but realised that this was a better outcome than losing her daughter completely. So she announced that whenever her daughter was in the underworld, she would continue to stop all plants and vegetation from growing. But it was clear that over time, Persephone grew to respect and love Hades. Indeed, she was no longer his prisoner, but now ruled alongside him as Queen of the Underworld. And with this, winter was created. For the first few months of the year that Persephone was in the underworld, the plants and crops on Earth withered and died. But when Persephone returned to Olympus, they would begin to grow again. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like. To see more of our content, subscribe to stay updated, and if you have stories from mythology you want to see explored, leave a comment below.